It's funny how something as simple as a knock on the door can turn your whole world upside down. I've always been the kind of person who likes to keep to myself. I don't answer calls from numbers I don't recognize, and if someone messages me out of the blue, it takes me a while to respond. But the one thing that really gets under my skin is when someone shows up at my door unannounced. It's like an invasion of my space, my privacy. And for as long as I can remember, I've had this habit of not answering the door unless I'm absolutely sure I want to. It started back in college. I was living in this tiny, messy apartment, just me and my bad habits. I'd be smoking or maybe just too lazy to clean up, and then knock, knock. The sound would hit me like a punch to the gut. My whole body would tense up. I'd tiptoe over to the door, careful not to make a sound, and peek through the peephole. Most of the time, I didn't open the door. I'd just pretend I wasn't home. I don't know if it was introversion or just plain paranoia, but it stuck with me. Even now, 15 years later, I still do it. No matter where I've lived, no matter how many times I've moved, I always tiptoe to the door, check the peephole, and if I don't feel like dealing with whoever's on the other side, I just don't open it. It's become a reflex, a way to protect myself from the unexpected. I thought it was harmless until 2 weeks ago. It was a Friday night. I'd had a long week at work, and for the first time in a while, I let myself relax. I smoked a little, played some video games with friends, and just tried to enjoy the night. I had my headphones on, completely immersed in the game, when I felt it. A sound, like a knock, just barely audible over the noise in my ears. I pulled my headphones off, my heart skipping a beat. I held my breath and listened. Nothing. I figured it must have been my upstairs neighbors. They have a kid who's probably staying up late, making noise. I shrugged it off and put my headphones back on. Big mistake. The night went on, but that sound kept coming back. Knock, knock. Just faint, rhythmic tapping, like something waiting. I ignored it at first. Maybe it was the weed playing tricks on me. Maybe I was just tired. But by 2 a.m., I'd had enough. I logged off, crawled into bed, and started scrolling through my phone, trying to wind down. That's when I heard it again. Slow, deliberate, no mistaking it now, a knock, right at my front door. My stomach dropped. I sat up, my heart racing, my mind scrambled for answers. Was it an emergency? A late-night visitor? But why hadn't they knocked harder? Why wasn't there any urgency in the knock? Why was it so patient? I slid out of bed, my breath shaky. I moved carefully, trying to make no sound. I grabbed my phone, using its flashlight to guide my steps, but I turned it off before reaching the door. I didn't want whoever was out there to know I was awake. I crept forward, pressing my eye to the peephole. The cold rush of dread flooded my veins. There was someone standing there. Their back was to me. The hallway was a dead end. It's not like they were facing another door. There was nothing there, just a wall. The figure was tall, broad, dressed in black. The sound of their breathing, deep, slow, heavy, echoed through the silence. My skin crawled. My mouth went dry. Every instinct in me screamed at me to move, to do something, but I couldn't. I just stood there, frozen, watching through the peephole. And then it twitched. Not a step, not a turn, but a violent shudder, like something inside it was broken. A glitch. The body was unhinged for just a second. It did that a few more times. It seemed to jerk backward, though it didn't turn. It wasn't a normal retreat. It was moving backwards, but not towards me. It was almost mechanical. I kept looking through the peephole. The hallway was empty, and it stayed empty. I barely slept that night. Every little noise made me flinch. Every shadow felt wrong. The next day, I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe it was just the weed or my exhaustion playing tricks on me. But deep down, I knew better. That figure, that sound, It was real, and it wasn't going away. The knocking came again the next night, and the night after that. Every night at exactly 2:30 a.m. it was there, slow, methodical, unhurried. And every night I crept to the door, heart pounding, and peered through the peephole. It was always there, always in the same spot, always facing the wall. The second I saw it, my stomach would twist with dread like ice spreading through my veins. But still, I'd check. I had to. Maybe I thought if I didn't, it would get worse. My bad habit had the best of me, and I truly couldn't ignore it. I started to notice other things too. Small, subtle changes in my apartment. A chair slightly out of place. A book lying open on the table when I was sure I'd closed it. The faint smell of something metallic in the air. I told myself it was just my imagination, but the unease kept growing. One night, I decided to test it. I stayed up late, determined to catch whoever or whatever was doing this. I sat in the living room, the lights off, staring at the door. My phone was in my hand, ready to call the police if I needed to. The minutes dragged by, each one feeling like an eternity. Finally, at 2:30 a.m., the knocking started. I froze. My heart pounded in my chest as I crept to the door. I pressed my eye to the peephole, and there it was. The same figure, standing in the same spot, facing the wall. I took a deep breath and did something I'd never done before. I spoke. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice trembling. The figure didn't respond. It didn't move. It just stood there, breathing heavily. I repeated the question louder this time. Still nothing. I was about to give up when it happened again. The twitch, the violent shudder. This time, it was more pronounced, more unnatural. The figure's head jerked to the side as if it were trying to turn but couldn't. My stomach churned and I stumbled back from the door. The next morning, I called my landlord. I told him about the knocking, about the figure in the hallway. He listened patiently, but I could tell he didn't believe me. He said he'd check the security cameras, but he didn't sound hopeful. When he called back later that day, his tone had changed. "There's nothing on the cameras," he said. "No one's been in your hallway at that time. Are you sure you're not just imagining things?" I didn't know what to say. I knew what I'd seen, what I'd heard. But if the cameras didn't show anything, what did that mean? Was I losing my mind? Last night, something changed. The knocking started like usual, the rhythmic tap, tap, tap against the door. But I was already in bed. I hadn't fallen asleep yet. I sighed and rolled over, ready to check it as I always did. But this time, when I looked through the peephole, there was nothing. Nothing at all. No one stood in the hallway. No tall, broad figure. Just empty space. I was already pulling away from the door when I heard it again. This time, it came from behind me. The knocking was at my bedroom door. My blood ran cold. My body froze. The knocking came again, slow and deliberate. I turned my head, panic rising in my chest. The hallway was dark, the bedroom door shut tight. Knock, knock, knock louder, rattling the wood. My legs trembled, and I froze between my front door and my bedroom door. I didn't know what to do. The doorknob turned. I stumbled backward, gasping. My heart felt like it was about to explode. The air grew thick, suffocating. My breaths came in shallow bursts, like I couldn't get enough oxygen. Knock, knock, knock. The last one was a crash, a thunderous bang that shook the walls, and then silence. I didn't move. I couldn't move. It felt like hours before the first light of morning crept through the blinds. Only then did I dare go into my bedroom. It was empty. Tonight. I know it will come again, but I won't look. Not this time. Because I know if I do, I won't be looking at it. It will be looking at me. I've started packing my things. I can't stay here anymore. Every creak, every shadow, Every faint sound sends a jolt of fear through me. I don't know where I'll go, but I know I can't stay. The knocking hasn't stopped. If anything, it's gotten worse. Sometimes I hear it during the day now, soft, almost imperceptible, but there, waiting. I don't know what it wants. I don't know if it's real or if I'm losing my mind. All I know is that I can't ignore it anymore, and I can't keep pretending it's not there, because it is, and it's not going away.